Hello, welcome back to the Astro channel. Tonight's session, what we're going to do is we're going to compare a bunch of our processing results for Alex McConaughey's NGC7000 result, NGC7000 image. He had imaged it, provided the data. It is posted on our website, theastroimagingchannel.com. Go to the homepage. Click watch now. It's going to be right above this video that you're watching right now. If you at home would like to, please feel free to download it. You can follow along a little bit, or at least zoom in and see kind of what it looks like. In the meantime, I am also going to refer you to our website, theastroimagingchannel.com, image of the week submissions. Let me just show you where they are. If you are on our homepage, hover over image of the week submissions. It brings you right here. And right here you can see a few of the different images that were submitted in higher resolution than what you're going to see over the screen. So you'll at least get an idea as to what we did. Maybe during the session, if people have some downtime, they can submit their own processed versions here if you haven't. You'll be able to see a bunch of different versions, including my own right here. And of course, this week's image of the week was one of these processed versions. Victor von Puenbrock, I believe. Obviously, the wall processed, he had processed it. Very nice rendition, kind of I don't want to call it a soft, but a really interesting and colorful, flowy rendition of it. I've seen a few of these now, so how do you describe them? I don't quite know. Each one has its own nuances that the processor introduces, and that's basically what we're gonna show here tonight, is how everyone interprets it and translates it. So that said, if I click that, I should take my screen back. There we go. So I know that a couple of the people in the room were willing to kind of show us their processing job and what they did quickly. Maybe since it's the first one I saw, I'll start with Eric. Eric, you there?
Yes, I am here.
Would you mind taking us on a walkthrough of your processing job? Just the quick version.
We're going to do the elevator pitch of processing, not going through every step, but I got some screens up here, and I'll tell you what I did, and you'll have to believe that I actually did that. So, share. So this is PixInsight. So the first thing I did is I brought up all the RGB and did a channel combinations, this little process down here. And the result was this guy right here. Now this is a default stretch. This one up here, this is off, and this is on. If you do the default stretch, you kind of blow out the stars, you don't get the star color. So I do an arc sign stretch. So we'll turn this off. Here's the arc sign stretch. We'll bring up the preview of the arc sign stretch. Whoops, that doesn't work. We'll hit estimate black point. And now we show all the areas that are going to be completely black, which we don't want. So we'll move the black point down, and we'll get our here we go. So we're going to have 1,000 stretch factor and a black point right here. We'll turn off the preview, and we drag this little caret over, and there we have our default stretch. And it looks a little funky and has some flaws in it, but it's really a good start. And what I do after that is I'll go through a TGV denoise, which we're not going to do here because it takes a few extra seconds. And that becomes my color black background. Now, the green we get rid of in Photoshop, which would be the next thing I'll show you. But that's my default stretch on the RGB color. So turn that off. No, we're not going to save it. Then we have the HA, which I'll simply do a default stretch, just like you see it here. So I'll drag that into the histogram transformation. We'll use that stretch. We have nice small stars. And that will be some of the detail we get in Photoshop, and it'll also add the red color for the HA emissions. We're not going to do it here, but that'll be my default stretch. And the luminosity, let's see, default. Luminosity, I can either do with an arc sine stretch or a histogram transformation. I think I use the arc sine stretch. Let's see how that works. I think we could do that quickly. We'll turn that off. Arc sine stretch, preview, black point. Bring this down a little bit. Nope, we didn't use that. We used the histogram transformation. And that becomes our luminosity layer. So basically, I end up with an image like that for the luminosity. I do a little noise reduction, since if you zoom in, you get a little bit of noise, not much. You can get rid of that with TGV denoise. And that's all for PixInsight. And now we go into here. So we're going to turn everything off. I'm just turning off the layers now. So this is the image that came over from PixInsight. And of course, we have nice green stars, which we get rid of using the, let's see, well, I guess we don't have it in here, but there's a function, there's a filter in Photoshop which you can get rid of the green. And here we got rid of the green, and that becomes our background layer. And then we take the luminosity that we brought over from PixInsight. Oh, by the way, you notice that I cropped some of this. So it's those little edges that weren't quite registered, or where you had some other odd colors. I just got rid of that by crop. So this is a cropped image. So this is the luminosity. I darkened it a little bit, a little more pleasing to my eye. And then I did a high-pass filter, which means I took the HA layer, removed the stars, and did a series of high-pass filters, maybe 2, 4, 8, 16 pixels wide. And there I'll just, let me see if I can bring this over. So here are the high-pass filter group. And these are all the high-pass filters. And when I turn them on, it really brings out the edges in the nebula. We can see that, right? High-pass filters, no high-pass filters. Let's get that out of the way now. Then I made, and the last thing I really did was bring out some of the red by taking the HA layer, converting HA to color, blackening out the G and the B, and just overlaying the red HA, the starless red HA, and using that as a lightening layer. And that really brings out all the red that's in the nebula. And just a little adjustment on the hue and saturation, do a stamp, and I like it darkened a little bit, and that's my final image. How long did that take, Adam?
That took about 5 minutes.
There, 5 minutes, the 5-minute processing. No, this didn't take 5 minutes to do. It probably took a couple hours to get this all done. But this was the result.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you, Eric. Obviously, Eric uses Photoshop for layers, and probably uses it properly with the adjustment layers. So I'm gonna kind of spoil this, Eric. So before the show, Eric was demonstrating what he had done, and he realized he messed up something on a layer. And because he had used adjustment layers, he was able to quickly, within like 2 minutes, fix it. so that you guys out there weren't able to see that he had a flub in there. Had I done that in one of my images, because I neglect to use adjustment layers, particularly in Photoshop. I don't know why. I would have been well, in trouble. But
well, Adam, I mean, I think we have different ways of processing. I think you're more of a PixInsight all the way guy. But I've used Photoshop for as long as there's been Photoshop, which I think now is 27 years. And it's just hard to give up, all the knowledge that you have. But PixInsight certainly does some things that Photoshop can't possibly do or can't do as well. So really, all the pre-processing, initial stretching, and noise reduction, all that is done in PixInsight, and then Photoshop really, does those other little tricks that we've learned after all these years. So I'm probably always going to be a hybrid guy.
I used to be a lot more hybrid, but I've gone more and more towards PixInsight. Eric, will you do me a favor and show us where ArcSine Stretch is in PixInsight? Someone in chat is asking. Version 1353. Hold on.
Give me just a minute. I'll bring it up.
Version.
Oh, okay, ArcSine Stretch. It's just a process. So if you go here and you look at all your processes, ArcSine Stretch.
It should also be under the intensity transformation category.
Yeah. Well, generally what I'll do is I'll set all the processes that I'll use routinely. I'll set off in a list on the right, not on this screen, but on the big monitors. So I very seldom go to the menu unless it's something new I want to learn. But ArcSine Stretch is right there, and it may not be obvious to use, but as long as you start off with an image, well, let's see if I can. You start off with a linear image, and you use the preview in ArcSine Stretch, and then actually the luminosity is not a good example, but let's go with luminosity. Estimate the black point and get rid of all those parts which are 100% black. And you can adjust the stretch factor here. I most often end up with 1,000 stretch factor. Close the preview and then just drag the caret over and it does your stretch. It doesn't work too well for luminosity, doesn't work too well for HA, but it works pretty good for RGB images.
What version is your? Would you mind clicking resources up top there? And
what version of PixInsight?
Right there about PixInsight. Yep. 1352.
I don't know. Is that the latest?
I believe there's a 1353, but they're saying they don't have it in 1353. And let's see.
I think I have 1353 on the other computer, and it's certainly there because I use it in RGB images.
I don't see it here.
Well, don't take away my ArcSine Stretch.
No, I don't think they removed it, but for some reason we don't have the tools in there. I don't know. It's not in 1353 any longer. No, it seems to be a common problem. Oh boy, this is the rabbit hole. Now reading the PixInsight forums to find out why the module isn't loaded.
I don't think there was anything special. I think it just came with it. Someone mentioned it to me, and it came with the latest version and tried it out. It takes a while to figure out because the instructions for the ArcSine Stretch are virtually non-existent. So it takes a while to figure out that you don't want to use, a preview of the stretch with ArcSine Stretch. You have to use the black linear version.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure that if you go on PixInsights forums and just ask quickly, they'll tell you how to download the module if it's not loading automatically. Got to be a simple fix. But yeah, I'm not noticing it in my PixInsight too, so I'll be looking for that too. And I think I've used it before, almost certainly on this computer. So I'm not sure.
Have they done the updates?
I actually just did my updates and didn't download it. So,
Are we clear as to what the name of it is? I see misspelling here, and that may be a source of.
Well, it's ArcSign Stretch. It's ARCSIN.
It's
right?
ARCSINH.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
While
version are you guys at? I'm at 1.08, and I have it.
Let me check.
The last number is 1352.
Yeah, 1352.
I'll get a new version warning, but it says that I have to download a whole new.
Yeah.
It's not like a down. You have to install a new version of it.
Yeah.
And I've been too lazy. I haven't bothered doing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try doing that probably after this or when I have some downtime. We'll see. I don't think my computer though can handle streaming this and reinstalling a PixInsight version all at one time. Alex, I know you said you had some stuff to show with your image. Would you like to give us a demonstration?
Yeah, hang on. Oh, there we go. I am live. Hi. Yeah, I got to start sharing, huh? Okay, you got my screen, I think. I'll get rid of you. And okay, I did something that I didn't see either of you guys do so far, and I thought I'd introduce people to it. I've got a collection of processes that are already made up, and I use them almost all the time. I got some of them from I got most of them from Warren Keller's website. If you're a member of his website, you can download his chronological or his alphabetical processes, and they give you good samples for where to start. And so the first thing I did to process this image was I just kind of displayed them all where I could see them, downloaded them and displayed them. And so they're all sitting here, and you'll notice these marks. The first thing I always do is I do an LRGB combo, and I'll take each of the images and load them into an RGB. Let's see, where am I? H, I'm going to skip for a while. It doesn't matter for what I'm doing right now. What am I on? Luminance now? Put Luminance up there, and let me go find the red. And I'll stick my red in there. And I always do a quick combine. And the combine looks something like this, and then do a super stretch. And I do the super stretch because with the super stretch, you can see those. Remember what Eric was talking about. See this mess up here? And down here, there's a different, and so I want to get rid of that before I start calculating things. So the next thing I'm going to do is a dynamic crop, as we did. Adam did it at the end of his session last week. I always like doing it before because it gets rid of all the data, all the statistics that, I really don't care about. Like if I later find out that I've got something that I'm cropping out, or something that I'm going to be cutting out that I don't want to cut out, well, maybe I do want to cut it out because it's ugly stuff anyway. So now that I've got the dynamic crop set up, I just apply it to all of my other frames. And it goes like that, just like you would anything else. And so you get them all let's see, where am I? B's been done, the H has been done. I think the H has been done. I'd get them all done. And then, you see this LRGB combination still open? Just do it again. I missed one of them. G's. Okay, now I do it again. It's still off. But that's okay. I've got them all up here anyway, because I did this because I knew it would screw up. But you see, all I've done is I've done the LRGB combination again. And this time, my LRGB crop will be all better. And these artifacts will be gone. I don't need these. These are the original documents, and I don't need them anymore. So I got rid of all them. And these are all the crops right here. And so I can use them for other things I'm going to do. The next thing I did was I just do a channel combine of the three colors. And I can do this either out of LRGB or out of here. So I get the blue, the green, and the red. And do my combine. And there it is. And I take a look at what it looks like, and that's about what it looks like, and it looks just the same as it looked for all you other guys. But you'll notice that if I do a super stretch up here, all this junk that was up here and the stuff that I wanted to crop out, it's pretty gone. I should say that this was all done in a hurry, you know, during the football game this afternoon, getting ready for doing this. This is not the actual stuff that I used. I put a lot more thought into it all the way along. I'm trying to show you the processes of what I did rather than exactly what I did. The next thing I did was, I've got some stuff here that I don't particularly like. So I'm going to do an ABE or DBE depending. But what I mostly want to do is just see what it looks like. Now here is my background that I extracted from here, and it doesn't, yeah, it did some stuff. And I could probably keep it. Actually, it looks better this time when I did it than I did it before, so I'd probably keep it. The last time I did it, it didn't look all that much better, so I just left it the way it was. Okay, so basically I've got an RGB here. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do a mask stretch just like Adam did last time, but instead of going over to the Process Explorer and all that other stuff, I've got my mask stretch. Oh, the other thing I do is if I had some noise problems or if this were a Luminance, I might check into the noise stuff, but I'm not going to do that tonight because I did a little bit of it in the original stuff. But here's my mask stretch icon, and I bring it over here and do that. For that to happen. So I think I'm going to. Well, it's taking just as long to abort it as it would have done to do it. Oh well. And I got that, and I did a little bit of histogram stretching so that it was even better. I'm going to get rid of this because that's my fake one. This is the one I did this afternoon so I could demonstrate it to you. And then I went and I did some saturation and some, I think I did some curves and some stuff like that to give it a little more life. And then I put all that stuff aside. And then I pulled my Luminance. Where's my Luminance? Where's my Luminance? Where's my Luminance? Oh, it is, at that time, it was just my Luminance. It was cropped Luminance, so I took that. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's not processed at all here. So the first thing I did was I wanted to make a star mask. And to make a star mask on that, what I did was came over to my star mask, and I've got this set up for kind of my equipment. I know that that's about where I want to start, and I can play with it a little bit here, but I'm not sure I've got all the brain power to pull this off. So it's set up for me like this, and so I just go ahead and apply it. And again, we're going to abort that because it takes forever on my old slow computer. But when I've done all that stuff, I've got a star mask that looks something like that. So I apply the star mask to the to my image. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so we can see it better. And I'm going to hide it so you can't see it. But those are the stars that are in my unprocessed image. Then I'm going to come down here to morphological. And I'm going to probably do this about 5 times is my experience. For you, it may be different. But I'm going to run this right here. And you will see that the stars get smaller. Okay. Now that they're smaller and everything, that's I always like the smaller stars if I can get them. And I can get rid of, this is what it looks like now as compared to now, let me see, can I do this back? Can I back off this? Yeah. No. Yeah, here's the morphological. Here is after it's been transformed, and here is it before it's been transformed. Let me get this up where you can get rid of that. Before and after the transformation, and you can see it just makes my stars a little smaller, relatively easy to do. So my stars are smaller. I'm working on my luminance, remember. Now from there I go and I don't want to actually close these things because while I don't need them, I may need them if somebody asks a question. Where am I? Over here, this is after I've done all that stuff. Let me see, has this been stretched yet? Okay. So basically what I've done is I've done the same thing to my luminance, cleaned it up, made the stars smaller, and made it prettier. I do the same thing with my hydrogen alpha. Looks something like that. Now the stars are characteristically different. I mean, there just aren't as many stars or anything else like that, which is going to happen with narrow band imaging. I think this is a 5 nanometer bandpass out in the desert. So that's kind of what it looks like out there. And you can see that there just aren't nearly as many stars as there are here. And if I were to use this, I found that it just took too many stars away. So I instead wanted to use a combination of my luminance and my hydrogen alpha. And to do that, I did some pixel math. And I took half of my hydrogen alpha and half of my luminance and made it into another, into basically what will become my luminance. Okay? Then when I took it all together, okay, you guys can all go away now. When I put it all together, I put that hydrogen alpha mask on top. Now, this is not from this afternoon. This is what I did earlier. Now, the one thing that I did do over in Photoshop that I think I'd like to show you is this is from this afternoon's work, and you'll notice it's not the same as the other one. But you see this, there's a lot of detail up in here, a lot of crispness that's just not it's not here yet. So one of the tools that I particularly like, and it's probably too gross. You got to be a little bit subtle about it. So the strength is only at 50%, but you see the sharpening tool? I'm going to find areas that I want to appear sharper. And because they're sharper, they're going to stand out a little bit better over in Photoshop. So I can actually get better looking results by coming through and just painting through here. You may not be able to see it by the time it gets translated into YouTube and stuff like that. But if I do that enough, I wind up with something that looks like that. See how this is a lot sharper up here, a lot sharper up there? And that's basically what I did to get my image eventually. Okay, that's it, Adam.
Thanks, Alex. So we all we all have our own kind of what we call it, kind of consoles, I guess. Alex uses the icons lined up. I know that's something that Warren Keller basically is a proponent of, and gives you his own modules so that you kind of do the walk along. I definitely will acknowledge, let me see, let me take my screen back there. I'll definitely acknowledge that I'm more of a kind of seat of the pants guy. So when I'm processing, I'm not quite sure what my next step is going to be. I look at the image and I kind of decide from there where I want to go. Is there anyone else in the room that's processed this and would like to either show us what you did or just talk about the image, what challenges you saw?
Hey, Adam, I processed it. I can talk about it a little bit.
Go right ahead, David.
All right. So I've had this up for like a week, and my temp space has failed, and so I can't replay some of the steps, unfortunately, but I can walk through some of the stuff I've done. So let me bring this up. All right. So you'll see PixInsight's complaining about reading swap files because my temp space got cleared out and lost the swap files. But so this is the final image I finished up with. You know, like Eric and Alex, there's a lot of similar processes. The way I went about generating the RGB was the same. I use RGB combined at the beginning to create an RGB image, just like this. Just straight RGB, no luminance or anything in there. I then, processed it a little bit, combined, stretched it some, stretched the luminance, combined them, and then I did effectively a new luminance with the HA and the luminance, combined that into the image, and then did a continuum map with the red. I'm not sure if you all have ever seen this before, but there's a PixInsight tutorial on how to combine narrowband and broadband data that uses a continuum map function rather than a max function, and it gives slightly better results for this. So it takes a little math and some noise reduction and stuff to make that work, but it gives some pretty good results, and you generally get better star shapes and stuff out of that than you will with the max function. So I combined that. I also combined part of that into the red channel so that I get a little bit more red across here than just kind of the pinkish color that you end up with out of a normal RGB. Then, once I got to that point, I noticed that there was definitely the kind of blue corners, in the upper right and lower left. To get rid of that, I used ABE. So you can actually see, some ABE backgrounds of what that looked like. But I did a little bit of a trick. Normally when I do this, I did it in one pass. So I did it with just one, let's see if I have it up here. Yeah, ABE. So I did, the first pass was just a function degree of 1. So that I only get a planar representation. It's a 2D map only. So it's effectively a plane of color. And I apply that to just remove kind of very, very coarse gradients from the image. And then I did a second pass with a high function degree, in this case 5. And that gave me something similar to this, but this is a little bit modified. What I've done was I've split out the lab results, the LAB. So if you stretch these, you'll see differences in here for A and B. But then I've taken the luminance and made it the median of all the luminance that was there. So effectively, I just took pixel math and just said this image now contains the median of the image. So when I apply this to the image, every pixel in there is now replaced with a median value. And then when I combine this back together, it basically just gives me the chrominance information with no representation of the gradients of the intensities. And that's what this second pass of background is. It's just the colors. And so I can use that to kind of feel out using some blending how much wants to come in and out of that picture without really taking the colors away, just trying to get rid of the corners. So that's how I got the kind of colors out of the corners that way, and was able to use a little bit more of the image. All the hot pixels, I just use clone stamp, just painstakingly going through, clone stamping them out. I also did a mask. Let's see which mask this is. Not this one. This mask, and did a morphological transformation with a bias. Bring that up. Oh, not morphological. Sorry, multi-scale median transformation. So you can see that I used a bias on 2, 3, and 4 layers, with 3 being the highest. This is similar, but not quite the same as a high-pass filter like Eric uses. But you can see it's only going to work on these areas where it's brighter. So when it's applied to this mask, the stars are not affected. But the brighter parts in the image, like Alex was doing when he was painting, get a little bit of additional detail added to them, just in those areas. But no additional detail is added in the background, since it tends to be a bit more noisy. Outside of that, just a bit of noise reduction and stuff to clean up the image. That's it, Adam. Yeah.
Was that mask, lightness mask, with the stars removed from it, or subtracted from it, I guess?
Yes, so it's just, in fact, if I look up the history here, this is the wall 1. So you can see it was pixel math, where I just took the image minus, I think, Luminance clone had the stars in it at the time, and then I did some stretching on it to get this effect. So it is just the lightness with stars subtracted, and then some stretching.
Yeah, that's a very useful mask,
Yeah.
For a lot of things. Anytime you're just kind of enhancing detail, but don't want the stars to get ugly.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Is that what you've done?
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Adam, can I add a comment here?
Absolutely.
You have to be pretty careful when you're using any kind of background removal tool, no matter whether you're using Photoshop or PixInsight, on nebula, because the color goes all the way through, especially in the red channel, and in a reflection nebula in the blue channel. So I tend not to do that for nebula that stretch over the entire image. And if you do apply some kind of background reduction, be sure to apply it in your luminosity as well, if you choose to do that, because it will definitely carry over. If you have the gradient in 1, you're going to have the gradient in 2. But my first instinct is not to do it in a big nebula like the North American.
So Eric, I would agree with you in most cases, right? This case was a little bit different because you did have those blue corners.
Right. I mean, right. And again, my approach to that is you crop it out.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than fight to it and perhaps take out some color where it really deserves to be, it's just easier to crop it, and that becomes your image, rather than trying to get that green out of the corner or the blue out of the corner, as it were.
This image did, though, have kind of a simple gradient going through it. I think that, I mean, it obviously had the purple on the right side. It had a purple glow. I'm not sharing my screen, am I? I'm gonna share my screen. Screen. There you go. The image did have kind of a purple glow over on the right side over here, but I want to say it had like a brightening up in the top right and a darkening down here. So I ended up doing a couple passes of background, dynamic background extraction, but the way that what I'll say is the way that I basically make sure I'm doing it right is, you know, everyone says, oh, you have to put the sample points in the right place. Well, yeah, you have to put your sample points in the right place. This is a terrible image to sample because there's nebula filling the hole.
Yeah, where do you put your sample points? And where do you set your tolerances here? But by the way, before I get backed into a corner, you know, never say never, never say always.
Yeah. So like, first of all, I'm seeing that I don't even think I put those sample points there, but they're in there. Maybe this is the other image. Maybe this is the original image. Okay, this is the one that I was working on. Let me reset it. Oops. Let me reset it. So yeah, so I don't know if you can see it, but it's brighter up in the top left. It might be part of that purple band that kind of extends over this way, but it's much brighter like off here. So there's almost two gradients going through it. One top left to bottom right, and then one just kind of slight that doesn't really extend much into the image, but takes the bottom left. So yeah, sample points, really, really important, but I don't really care where they are because I just want to try and get a good sample there, a good sample there. I'm trying to pick that dark nebula, but like I said, it doesn't really matter to me because I'm going to review it. I'm going to take a look at the background image that is generated and actually look at that gradient that's in here and say to myself, is that taking care of what it is? And I see one of those two gradients. I see kind of a brightening in the bottom right down here and a darkening up here, but it's not basically right here that I see.
Could you stretch that image a little bit? Just give it one of the stretchers to exaggerate it. There we go.
There you go. Right. So this isn't taking care of that first or the banding for that matter in the right and left side. But I think if I were to apply this, it would take care of one of the gradients I'm looking at. With a subtraction, and I'm going to create a new image out of it. We'll see. It might not. It might not do what I want, but I think it's going to get me closer. Yeah. Just barely, but it just barely took that out. Now the other gradient that I have is up here. So I'd end up, well, I have to close that out, right? Close that out. But I mean, I'm not going to even run through this, but I guess the point that I'm making is put the samples wherever you want, but think about the gradient that's in the image that you're trying to take care of. And when you review your sample image, if it's wrong, do something different. Put a sample in a slightly different spot. Don't pick that background area. Try using ABE, even if it's just to create that background image that is going to be subtracted from your image to remove that gradient. See what happens. See ABE, that I can tell right now, no, that probably not.
You've just taken out all the red.
I just removed the nebula.
That's
right?
just a blur of the image. That's
right.
just a blur of the image.
But like I said, I don't have to use this. I can just click and it's gone, and say ABE bye-bye.
I think it's worthwhile to have both in your mind. The idea is if there's an obvious gradient, you work to get it out. But with a nebula like this, where it fills the screen, You got to be careful you're not removing things. And all of this is kind of premised on the idea that we know what this should look like in the end, which is always a risk, because maybe we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not want mine to look like the Sierra Madre in Mexico. I wanted an eagle flying along. You notice how it's composed? I noticed Tolga at one point put it back north to south like it belongs. But I didn't want that. I wanted an eagle flying through the picture.
Ooh, that's gonna drive you nuts. Yep. Yeah. So it was. I mean, this was fun. I'll say this: I don't process other people's data that often, or I haven't processed other people's data that often that was kind of in this sort of venue where we're all kind of comparing it, and I think these things are fun. So maybe we'll do a few more of these. Alex said right in advance, this isn't supposed to be the best data out there. So maybe we'll do it a few different ways. We'll give you some really awesome data, and then we'll give you some poorer quality data, and see what you can do with it.
Hey, Adam, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I think I just forgot to turn the dither on that night. I mean, at some point over the summer, I remember looking at PhD or something saying, wait a minute, I'm not dithering. Why am I not dithering? And, you know, told it to start dithering. And I probably collected those during that period of time. So there's all sorts of little dots all over the place that should have been calibrated out. How did you guys fix them?
So for me, because it wasn't my gear and I didn't acquire it, those little dots didn't really bother me. But if it was my gear and I was the one acquiring it and they were in every single image of mine, then they would really bother me. But I think they were mostly in the color channel, for that matter. I don't really think they stood out in my final processed image that much. I could see them in there a little bit, but not that much. But I know others had.
They were there, Adam. And the way to easily get rid of that, if you use the RGB as your color background, not like a tone map, but basically more or less like a slightly blurred image, those go away. Then your luminosity gives you your, you know, what shines through, and then you don't have those dots anymore. But unless you want to literally go through with the little clone stamp and get rid of them, you know, which could take you a very long time, just a slight blur, a Gaussian blur, will take care of that.
Yeah.
And then you might have to bring up the color just a tad too to make up for the blurring. And then the luminosity was, you know, was pretty good. It had a little bit of noise, but didn't have those dots in it. And then they all those little blue dots go away.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing. Is I guess what I realized when I was processing this is I do a lot of my processing in the pre-processing world, where, you know, if I think the image is too noisy, I'll go shoot another night of data. If I think, you know, if I see problems in the subs, I'll try to get rid of them at that stage with like cosmetic correction or things like that, instead of trying to deal with it after the stacking. So I realized that I spend a lot more of my time in the pre-processing before I even get to the LRGB channels than I do once those channels are done. Once those channels are done, my imaging takes very little time, my processing.
Oh, you know, the other thing I did, Adam, which I didn't bring up, is I did a linear fit on the RGB. Actually, David, I used your little linear fit, which works very well. It's always a good place to start. And it makes your initial RGB image a lot more natural. You don't have to have any angst about that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Actually, yeah. I use it for Hubble palette images too, where the sulfur and oxygen are really weak, and it brings up the sulfur and oxygen, and it makes the histogram adjustment that you do in Photoshop a lot less dramatic.
Yeah, it's trying to give you something that is perceptually the same intensity, right? So
It works
for matching
fine.
things like that. So,
Checks in the mail.
yeah.
John's saying vertical lines appeared, which he could not get rid of. There were some what we'll call bad columns in what I believe we said was either the blue or the green data. And some of us basically, because we blurred the RGB data or didn't really rely heavily on the detail that was in the RGB data, that kind of got averaged out and wasn't apparent in our final processed results. If you used the RGB and extracted the luminance, and I should point out, this is because there was a separate H-alpha and a separate luminance. If we were just relying on the RGB, then it might have been a little bit more of an issue. So I would look at the way you're processing it. I could almost say that Alex gave us more than we needed to work with on this. But that said, if you can take the luminance and the H-alpha and take the best of each in your combination and then apply the RGB, you'll have better results. But it all comes down to your processing abilities and how I don't want to say creative you can get, but how you can eke the most detail out of it by using the tools that we have.
But Adam, I think, you know, the data is the data. I mean, that camera is about a year old now, but the my other camera, my QSI, is, I still got bad columns and stuff. The real key to it is what Tolga was addressing. That never, you guys never should have seen that stuff. I talked about the dithering already and the cosmetic correction. It just, my other, you know, the other data that I've got, when I do that right, it isn't there. I don't know what happened, whether I lost track of which files were which and posted the wrong files or what. But once the doggy was, you know, out the door and down the way, I figured, okay, we're just going to leave it like it is. I can tell you that what Tolga said is most apt. The cosmetic correction would have taken care of a ton of that problem. You know, my cosmetic corrections set up to take care of the hot columns on the or not the dead columns. They're actually half the column in two different places. I don't know why I didn't do it. I didn't know why I didn't do it when I was supposed to be doing it, or why you guys ever saw it. So.
I think we've all done the same thing. We have our routine, right? We stick to it as tightly as possible because anytime you diverge from it, you might forget something. So you're sticking to your routine, and one morning you wake up and you check your data and
and I mean on this one, seriously, I sat there and I go, it was, you know, it was a warm night over the summer, and I looked and I said, why am I not dithering? I mean, seriously, I just noticed I wasn't dithering. That box wasn't checked. Why? I don't know. At the time, I was having I'm still having a real tough problem getting my flats to work on that particular camera. So these aren't excuses. These are explanations of what happened. And you know what? I work with a lot of guys that come out to Goat Mountain, and we're doing imaging and stuff like that. We've all got one problem or another. There are some people that are really good, really careful, really specific. And I'm not one of them, as you may or may not know. But these guys, they don't make mistakes, and yet things still get screwed up. And you got to learn how to deal with that kind of screwing up.
Alex, I would like to meet that guy who never makes mistakes.
Who doesn't make mistakes? Did you say?
I thought that's what I heard you said. You never. There are some guys who never make mistakes.
No. If I said that, what I meant to say was they are extremely precise. They put me to shame when they ask me, "Hey, what about that?" I go, "Oh, geez, I didn't notice that," because I don't notice this. I don't see this stuff, and yet these guys have problems too. You know, everybody has problems. I mean, I know one guy that's like got a job fixing other people's installations of their computers and telescopes and stuff, because things get screwed up. And I'll bet you that one guy, and you can tell me, Tolga, if this is true, sometimes gets perplexed because things are still screwed up even after his expertise. You know what I mean? So it happens, and we've got to be able to fix it.
Oh yeah, things go wrong. I mean, there's. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the fun in this, right? I mean, if everything worked perfectly, we would get bored.
Yeah, yeah. Figuring stuff out, like technical puzzles, kind of keep your brain working.
We've been through the whole list of questions. Everybody been checking?
I saw one question that I think you had answered right at that point about the star mask.
Oh, from Elmico?
Yeah, Nebulosity has a tool that creates a synthetic flat that Elmico had good luck getting rid of the color in the corners. Excuse me, of Alex's data. Yep, lots of variables. Anything can go wrong. Try and mitigate them as much as possible and have as many pain-free nights as possible. I do want to mention this. We're coming up on the hour. Next week, Astro Pixel Processor, Mabula, and I forgot his last name, will be on. He's the developer of Astro Pixel Processor, a program that we have had a ton of requests to have him come on, tell us about, because it's really hot in the astrophotography world. So, yes, we finally got him next Sunday. Definitely a good one to check out. It is already posted on our website, so you can see some of the details. But it'll be posted here.
Adam, before we go, I just wanted to say it was really cool having all you guys process that stuff. It's interesting to see, you know, what I thought was, you know, I liked the picture that I made, but you guys all made a picture, and there were different pictures, and they're just as good or better. You know, it's just cool to see all that. Obviously you guys got a kick out of it. So thank you.
Oh, no problem. No, I'll say that's one of the most exciting things for me was processing it and thinking I did a good job of it, and then seeing what Eric did on it and saying, oh, I like Eric's stars. And I kind of like what he did with the darkness in the nebula. And then seeing what David did on it and saying, oh, but David got some really cool star color out of it and also managed to really exaggerate that dark stuff. So it's really cool. And then it makes you want to go back through and reprocess it all over again, taking all the stuff you.
Hey, that reminds me, Elmico, you were taking data. You were doing it in nebulosity, right? Did you get an image out of this? You have to type your message. He's furiously typing right now. He and I.
We'd love to see your image. I don't know if it was posted on the website, but we'd love to see it if you did it in nebulosity.
Yeah, and tell us if you did something substantially different. You know, well, how was it to process in nebulosity compared?
Nikul, how can you get started with PixInsight? Where can you find processing information? The first thing I'm going to tell you to do is, so you're probably familiar with our videos. Alex did a video.
The bread and butter stuff.
A loaf of bread, a jug of milk, and PixInsight. We'll give you enough Google keywords to find that video. It's a good walkthrough of all the basics of PixInsight.
Well, Nicole, let's be sure. You want to talk about processing, or are you talking about astro imaging in general? Are you talking about what Adam just said was about PixInsight? And I'll type in my URL to that as soon as I get around to it here. But could you clarify your question? Just what is it that you're beginning doing that you want help with?
I'm assuming he's talking about processing with it because I know he's been on. So he's. I don't think he's just getting into astrophotography. But after checking out that video, Harry's Astro Shed, he has some good videos of kind of tool at a time walkthroughs of PixInsight. But what you're really going to want to do, if you're going to download even the trial of PixInsight, is probably buy Warren Keller's book, Inside PixInsight. It is basically a book user's manual that will give you everything you need to know. It won't make you good at PixInsight, but it'll give you everything you need to know to use PixInsight and to kind of use the tools good enough to get the image out. Then you're going to get through it. You're going to do it a couple hundred times, and you're going to start figuring out what you're doing, and you're going to run with that. You're going to know what you're doing. You're going to understand the tools, and basically, then you'll understand it well enough to use. It's not something you are going to come out with the best images day one. You have to learn. You have to commit a little bit, but pretty soon you will be using it and have some great images. There you go. Thanks, guys, for watching. Like I said, next week, Astro Pixel Processor. I guess that's all. Thank you all. Thank you, Eric, David, Tolga, and Alex. Alex specifically for submitting the data. And next time we'll have some other data challenges to come up with. But until then, we'll see you next week. Good night, guys. Clear skies.